NBC 10 has team coverage from Texas to here in Philadelphia to South Jersey. Our team of reporters speaking with people impacted by yesterday's shooting, asking our local lawmakers about gun control, and talking to parents about the safety of their children's schools. Let's begin with NBC 10's Miguel Martinez-Valle. He joins us live from Uvalde, Texas. Miguel, you got there this afternoon. Tell us what you've encountered.
Hey, yeah, hearts are heavy here at Uvalde. I mean, people are still coming to grips with what happened at Robb Elementary School about 24 hours ago. You can see behind me there are some of those flags in half-staff. Now, this is the Uvalde County Fairplex. We're expecting there to be a vigil here tonight that is closed to the press. Meanwhile, though, we know that many people here, they're still asking questions. And today we learned a little bit more about what happened at the school. Now, first, I do want to point out that everywhere you look around town, there are signs up and people asking to simply pray for Uvalde. Meanwhile, police, the FBI, and other members of law enforcement, they're back at the school trying to learn more about what exactly happened. Here's what we know right now. About 30 minutes before the attack, the governor said the 18-year-old gunman made 3 social media posts. First, posting that he was going to shoot his grandmother, then that he had shot her, and finally, that he was going to shoot up an elementary school. Facebook says the messages were private texts that weren't discovered until after the shooting. Officials say the gunman was approached by a school resource officer before entering the building through a back door. We know once inside, he shot and killed 19 students and 2 teachers. Among those teachers, Irma Garcia, who has been teaching for decades and was once recognized with an Excellence in Teaching award. I spoke to her family today. Her aunt tells me she was the glue that held that family and everybody together, and that she knows she died protecting her kids.
I know she got in front of those babies to protect them because she was that kind of a person. She was just an awesome, happy person. Music blaring at her house all the time. You knew that if we were going to Irma's house and she was going to have a gathering, we were going to have fun.
And just like that, we are learning more and more about some of the victims, their families, of course, so completely heartbroken by their loss. Now, again, for those families here in Uvalde who are grieving together, there's a vigil planned at the Fairplex behind me at 7 p.m. I'll send it back to you. I'm Miguel Martinez-Valle, NBC 10 News.
Miguel, thanks. Thanks for being there.
And earlier this afternoon in Uvalde, there was a heated exchange between Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Democrat Beto O'Rourke, a candidate for Texas governor. For more on that, let's go live to NBC 10's Lauren Make in our newsroom. Lauren.
Well, Jacqueline, Beto O'Rourke, the Democratic candidate for governor in Texas, interrupted today's news conference on the school shooting. O'Rourke approached the stage and began shouting at Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Now, last year, Abbott signed a series of gun rights laws, including one to make Texas a sanctuary state against new federal gun laws. Take a listen to what happened.
Is right now, and you are doing nothing.
No, he needs to get his ass out of here. This isn't the place to talk this over.
This is totally predictable when you...
Sir, you're out of line.
Now, officials on stage with the governor, that's not his voice you're hearing, tried to shout down O'Rourke, and O'Rourke moved toward the back of the room but continued to confront Governor Abbott before eventually leaving the building, and then continued his criticism of the governor outside.
The majority of Texas is not reflected by that governor or those people around the table who talk about mental health care or say that this is pure evil.
Now, on the stage with Governor Abbott was Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who shouted back at O'Rourke to sit down. And you might recall that O'Rourke failed in his bid to unseat Cruz back in 2018. Another official accused O'Rourke of turning the event into something political. Now, O'Rourke has been at the center of the gun debate before. When he ran for president, he caused a stir when he said, yes, he wanted to take people's AR-15s and AK-47s in mandatory buybacks of assault-style weapons. There are politics at play in terms of what happens next. This is an election year. Now, lawmakers are confronting decisions about whether to vote on new gun legislation and what that would look like. I'll have more on that with some local lawmakers coming up at 5 o'clock. Live in the newsroom, I'm Lauren Make, NBC 10 News.
All right, Lauren, we'll see you next hour. Parents and children know the excitement of the final days of school, what that can bring. But instead, a gunman ripped that away from the families in Uvalde who now have to cope with this memory for the rest of their lives. NBC 10's Rosemary Connors joins us now to speak about these victims and the survivors. Rosemary?
Tracy, the shooting has rocked the small community of Uvalde to its core. It's the deadliest shooting at an elementary school in this country since the attack at Sandy Hook Elementary in Newtown, Connecticut, almost a decade ago. These are some of the students identified and 2 teachers killed in the attack. They were all in the same 4th grade classroom where authorities say the gunman barricaded himself. This was the last week of the school year, and there was a series of themed days planned. Yesterday was Footloose and Fancy Day, so students dressed up. The father of an 8-year-old boy who survived the shooting spoke about one of the students who didn't make it.
On Monday, I had seen one of the kids, my son plays baseball, so they play against each other, and I had just seen them play. We always say, hug your kids every day and every morning when they go to school or after school, just do it every day, whenever you get a chance.
Uvalde is a small town of mostly Latino residents. It's a close-knit community. Many of the families know each other well. A 4th grade teacher who underwent an intensive surgery overnight survived it and is recovering. That's some final bit of news we wanted to share. However, of course, there are still a number of people still in the hospital, so the death toll could change. I'm Rosemary Connors, NBC 10 News. Jacqueline?
Rosemary, thank you. There have been 27 school shootings this year alone. According to Education Week, the disturbing rise in violence has led a growing number of schools to incorporate extensive safety measures. They include high-tech security systems ranging from facial recognition to gun detection software. There's no direct threat to New Jersey, but the state attorney general has directed local law enforcement to increase patrols through the remainder of this school year. NBC 10 South Jersey Bureau reporter Sydney Long is live in Gloucester Township to explain this for us this afternoon. Sydney.
Jacqueline, good afternoon. There are, in fact, 6,400 K-8 students that attend 11 schools here in Gloucester Township, making it the largest elementary school district in the state of New Jersey. And while this district and many others in surrounding towns already have very robust security programs in place, today we learned more about the added police and added presence of patrol units now through the end of the year.
On the heels of heartache in Uvalde and not having all the answers as to how and why such a tragedy could occur.
As a parent, as a law enforcement officer, I'm kind of speechless about it.
Gloucester Township Police are among several departments increasing police patrols and presence in and around South Jersey schools.
This morning we had all hands on deck. We had officers out, pulled off at different assignments, normal administrative duties, and everyone was out to show an enhanced presence. Because I know as a parent, that fear that a parent would have about sending their kid to school today.
Parents like Anna Sanchez, who has 6th grade twins at C.W. Lewis Middle School, are on edge.
I feel so sad for the parents and I feel unsafe right now.
If you were to come up to the door and try to get in, these stay locked throughout the day.
School Resource Officer Mike Nicholson showed us a secure vestibule designed to limit or eliminate any outside visitors from gaining entry.
They have a doorbell system with a camera on it that goes right to the secretary.
The increased police presence is for students to see too, students who may be fearful in light of 2 mass shooting events in 2 weeks.
To let them know we're going to do everything we can as police officers to keep them safe and that they can have a good, productive school day and not worry about getting hurt in school.
Gloucester Township implemented school resource officers right after the Sandy Hook massacre happened.
We never really can rest. I think yesterday's a reminder you can't rest on this issue.
It's not the first time it happens, and we really hope something changes.
Now, this summer, the district will build its 10th secure brick vestibule entryway. That will happen at Glendora Elementary School. In the meantime, Gloucester Township Public Schools also tell us that they drill as often as 2 times a month, not just on fire, but also on active shooter and other emergency drills, and police test them on it. We'll have more on that coming up at 5:30. For now, reporting live in Gloucester Township, I'm Sydney Long, NBC 10 News.
Sad measures, but clearly very needed. Sydney, thank you.
The push to change U.S. gun policies has consistently faced roadblocks from Republicans and interest groups like the NRA. A year after Sandy Hook in 2013, Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey helped to negotiate a bipartisan proposal to expand the nation's background check system, but it didn't have enough support in the Senate. Then last year, the House passed 2 bills to expand background checks and close loopholes for gun sales. Both failed to get enough support in the Senate once again. And today on Capitol Hill, Senator Bob Casey expressed his frustration at the lack of action.
We're supposed to accept the fact as Americans, I guess this is what the Republican position is, that we should surrender this problem. The most powerful nation in the world can't stop second, third, and fourth graders from being murdered in schools. The most powerful country in the world, I guess, can't prevent the shooting we saw in Buffalo. And you could go down the list of other tragedies. This is a uniquely American problem.
And today, Mayor Jim Kenney once again called on Harrisburg to take more action to stem gun violence here at home. Shootings continue to happen at a breathtaking pace here in Philadelphia.
NBC 10's Danny Freeman joins us now to explain why the city has had a hard time regulating guns in the past. Danny?
Well, Tracy, Jackie, for decades, Philadelphia leaders have tried to regulate guns in the city, most notably, I should say, in the 90s and early 2000s. But both times, courts struck down the bulk of local government's efforts.
All of our hearts are heavy today. Philadelphia agrees with the people of Uvalde, Texas, and all the families hurting today.
In his weekly gun violence press conference, Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney mourned the lives of those killed in Uvalde, Texas this week. But the mayor also repeated a message specific to our city.
When will enough be enough for elected officials in Harrisburg and Washington to do something about this? Or at the very least, stop preventing us from regulating guns in our own communities.
The city of Philadelphia has tried to enact gun control measures in the past. In 1993, the city passed a bill banning assault-style weapons, but the state passed a law repealing the ban, and the state Supreme Court ultimately struck down the ban in 1996. In 2007, the city passed ordinances banning assault weapons and limiting handgun purchases to one per person per month. But the following year, the Commonwealth Court struck down the bulk of those ordinances. Today, under state law, cities like Philadelphia cannot regulate gun sales or ownership on its own.
If they say this is something that the state and the state alone can regulate, then obviously the city is barred from regulating. And that is what has happened over the many years.
Everett Gillison served in Mayor Michael Nutter's administration during the last attempt to ban assault weapons. He says it's hard to say if Philadelphia will ever be able to make its own gun regulations.
We were always remaining hopeful that the carnage would get to a certain point that even those would be able to say, well, you know, we have to do something and we have to compromise somewhere.
But Second Amendment rights lobbyist Val Fennell doesn't see it that way.
We would think the people who live in the areas where they need access to firearms, most of those folks are law-abiding citizens, and they should not be, for their rights should not be infringed upon based on political expediency.
Now, Mayor Kenney said his priorities would include stricter background checks and holding people accountable for buying guns and then giving them to felons. Meanwhile, the gun lobbyist Fennell, he said his group would fight any effort to allow cities to regulate guns themselves. Danny Freeman, NBC 10 News.